Good morning, world. I'm Steve Rao, the host of Pod TV's World Edition, soon to be part of the Roku TV network. I greet you live from Morrisville in the Research Triangle Park in North Carolina, the eighth largest state in the United States of America. Well, we welcome you from anywhere in the world that you are today to our great show where we talk about global affairs, innovation, and continue our discussion of how the pandemic is changing and will change the political, cultural, and economic makeup of the world that we live in. I will be live from PBS Carolina tomorrow, our state news network, where I will be on the television talking about Ukraine and Russia. So our show will be from there, and we will be talking about some of the topics that we talk about on the state news. With that being said, today I want to begin my monologue with how far is too far? The seismic shift, like an earthquake, where political parties are being defined by the extremes. We're seeing this in San Francisco. The New York Times this morning issued an article that talked about how there was a recall in California on a school board. 3 school board members were ousted from office. Now, what's interesting is that let's look at the positions of these school boards. First of all, they wanted to rename 44 schools in the district so they no longer could have anyone deemed reactionary. These leaders were Abraham Lincoln, President Abraham Lincoln, Paul Revere, George Washington, John Muir, the environmentalist, and Dianne Feinstein, United States Senator. They wanted to eliminate grades and admission scores and tests as the standards for admissions at Lowell High School in that school board district and went to a lottery system. And they've been criticized for closing the pandemic for weeks. And these were really far left liberals and progressives who were thrown out of the office and actually kept the schools closed with no options of opening for over 2 years. Now, what's interesting in this article, and I want to bring this up today because I think it makes it a really good topic for us to discuss, and we're going to get into international affairs, Russia, Ukraine as well, is if you look at what's going around the country, Minneapolis voters rejected a measure to replace the city police department with an agency that would not have done anything with law enforcement. In Seattle, the top prosecutor, Ann Davison, left the Democratic Party and was able to win an election. And we're seeing in New Jersey and Virginia, Republican candidates having done very well in liberal suburban Democratic districts. And even Eric Adams, the mayor of New York City, has actually done really well, sort of distancing himself from Democrats and being a little bit more of a moderate. Now, what does this mean for the future? Well, at the end of the day, we're seeing extremes on both sides. Republicans have defended having the Confederate flag. They fought critical race theory. They fought, we're hearing about conspiracy theories that the election was rigged. We're seeing, data and disagreements about COVID vaccines and disappointment in gun regulations, not wanting gun regulations. I could go on, but the bottom line is this. You have Republicans that are sticking to their beliefs, their views, which are far to the right. And you have the Democrats that today don't even want us to recognize Thomas Jefferson or Theodore Roosevelt, 2 presidents of the United States, and refuse to accept a more conservative politics. But the Democrats that are succeeding are the ones that are breaking away from that and actually embracing more moderate positions. So what does this all mean? I don't know. Is it time for a new party in America? Is it time to sit down and actually try to listen to each other rather than defining everything through a tweet or a social media post that's defending an extreme for both sides of the parties? That's the $1 million question. And that's why I bring in my esteemed panel who make the big bucks to drive this conversation today. First of all, we're joined by Mark Lee, my co-host, radio celebrity, Shaquille Latimer from Down Under, Chris Greco, who is a former U.S. Lieutenant Colonel of the United States Air Force, who offers military analysis and foreign policy analysis, and Nick Paladeva, who is the founder of this network. Well, guys, I sort of threw that in together as I was reading the paper this morning, and Sasha Starr from Kansas. Well, I wanted to begin that debate today. I mean, just to talk about extremism on both sides and how we've gotten away from more centrist positions. And so, I know Shaquille Latimer, we normally don't start, but I will agree with Shaquille Latimer that some of these positions from these school boards seem to be a bit radical in terms of not naming leaders because they're reactionary, these kinds of things. So, Keo, do you think this is a litmus test for what's to come in the off-year elections with what's happening with the Democratic Party, that people are actually leaving the Democratic Party because they believe it's being too far to the left?
I think the Democrats are leaving people rather than people leaving the Democrats. And this isn't uniquely something that's about the Democrats. Republicans were very, very right, especially coming into the 90s and the early 2000s. They were very right, but even prior to that in history, Republicans have been very right wing, and it's said some things that would really put off the everyday person. I think the Democrats' problem is that they've gone from what they were sort of 15, 20 years ago, where they were pointing out social problems and trying to work out solutions for them that included everybody, to basically blaming America, sort of, painting America as this horrible, terrible country with a terrible past, and it's irredeemable, and the people in it are all horrible. And that's just it's not my experience of the United States. And it's not the experience of most people who live in the United States. Most people are not these evil, horrible people. And I think it's very hard to get people to unify behind that sort of position. Who's going to want to get up every day and go, "Yay, I've got the wrong skin color. I'm an oppressor." Nobody wants to grow up like that. Nobody wants to live like that. And the sort of championing of burning American flags by these 18-year-old, 20-year-old college kids, that's not going to endear your party to people, and it shouldn't endear the party to people. If you've got criticism of a particular thing that's happening, then you should work towards trying to change those things, but you should do so in a way that's respectful of America's history. And, every time I come to the United States, it seems like I'm the most passionate American in the country, and I'm not even American, because I'll point out how great the country is, what the history of the country is about, what happened in the Civil War, why you have the Bill of Rights, and all these different things. And Americans will just sit there and go, "Yeah, but we have this racist colonial past." And it's I think it's really sad. America is not unique in its history. All countries around the world have had things that have happened in their history that we can look back at in today's eyes and say are not great. And what we're seeing now is that the two political parties are just becoming, they're going so far to the extremes. And unfortunately, what I think is hurting Democrats is that the Democrats have gone so far to the extremes that people who normally would be split between Republicans and Democrats, such as liberals, mainstream liberals and libertarians, they are finding their only home with the Republicans, because they would say that everybody should be able to live their life how they see fit. And they're seeing the hard left progressive Democrats saying, "You must obey our rules." But what I'll just say, just to finish, is something that I said last year and I think the year before. Anybody who has any sense of sincerity in their beliefs in liberal democracy, or in your case, a constitutional republic led by a liberal democracy, anybody who believes in that system and the balance that system creates would not want to destroy their opponent. If you are a Republican, the last thing that you would want to see is a country without Democrats in it, because you need a strong party that opposes your ideas to point out to you when some of your ideas are going to leave some people behind. And if you are a Democrat who is passionate about the United States, the last thing that you would want to see is a country void of Republicans, for the same reason, because you'll make decisions without having any check and balance, and without realizing the harm to other parts of the economy and other parts of society that may not benefit from what you're proposing. And when parties try to destroy themselves like this, it becomes divisive, it hurts America, and it hurts the political system.
Shaquille, thank you. Going to go to Chris Greco and then Sasha Starr and then Mark. And so, Chris, what are your thoughts about this? In terms of just you were trained in the military, which you tend to work together as a unit, as a team, and here we have a political system where it's just so hard to build that sense of team, that sense of unit, because we're being driven by the extremism on the side. What do you think about what's going on in California? What's going on in both parties? Is it a seismic shift to the left and the right? An earthquake that's taking before us, where we're losing the foundation of getting things done in America.
Okay, so when I joined the military, when I was commissioned an officer in the United States Air Force, and every promotion after that, we repeat our oath. And our oath is to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That's our oath. It's not to any one person. It's not to any one party. It's not to anything. And I took that very, very seriously. The first three words in the Constitution are we the people, not we the Democrats, not we the Republicans, not we the liberals, not we the conservatives, we the people, which means that people do not understand. They have control over their destiny. And I think what's happened is that the seismic shift that we're referring to is something that has to be built with education. We got to get back to civics. We got to get back to teaching our children what government does for them. And let me tell you something, if you don't do that, that's right. That's right. Very good. If you don't do that, I'm telling you, you're going to get a bunch of, and I'm sorry to say it, ignorant. Now, ignorance means that you should know something that you don't. Nescience is something that you don't have to know that you don't. There's a lot of people that are ignorant of the facts of what has happened in the past. And I'll give you an example. In 1964, the Civil Rights Act was passed. There was a woman that sat next to me after Biden was elected, and she said, wow, I'm really glad that Democrats finally elected a president to fix all the stuff the Republicans have messed up. Of course, I'm a Republican. I just shut up and yes, ma'am. She has her opinion. I'm good with that. But the Civil Rights Act, if there were not Republicans voting for the Civil Rights Act, it would not have passed. I have all the figures. I just looked them up. I have all the figures. This is fact. There's nothing, I didn't make any of this stuff up. 60% of the Democrats voted against the Civil Rights Act. 60%. They had a supermajority in the House. It took Republicans to get it passed in both the House and the Senate. So, but I said that one time to a really good friend of mine, actually, who is black, and he said, that's all a lie. I said, there are times you just got to walk away. I said, fine. If you believe it's a lie and you don't want to look it up, it's government figures, then okay, you have your opinion. I walk away. And that's what's happening is the people are sitting there saying they're taking away our rights. I'll tell you who's taking away our rights, ladies and gentlemen. It is the media. Every time they put COVID, now think about this, Steve, every time they put COVID figures up, you know what reminds me of? The Vietnam death count, because that's what Walter Cronkite used to do on CBS. He used to put up how many Americans were killed, how many more Vietnamese were killed, how many Viet Cong were killed. And it's like, what the heck? You're putting up how many people die. In North Carolina, Steve, look it up. In North Carolina, what is the percentage, not number, what is the percentage of people that die from COVID every day? A percentage, and not this 7-day averaging horse poop that they put on, but every day. I'm a data analyst. I have a graduate certificate in it. I do it. I teach it. It is something that, the media is just, it panics people. And then
it's very confusing with the data. There's so much data going around.
Yeah.
But with that, let's go to Sasha Starr. Sasha, from a Canadian perspective, thank you, Chris.
You're welcome.
And we're going to talk about other issues going on in the world today. What do you think, Sasha, from a Canadian perspective of what I've said? Is this is this kind of extremism going on in Canada, or is it more of a coalition building kind of initiative, with parties working together? I mean,
you're talking about Canadian experience. We have elections from time to time, and I don't recall that elected government wouldn't be able to govern. The only thing is that some of them are much better at governing, and some others are not as good. But at least there is always a peaceful transition of power in Canada. And the ruling party has all the attributes and all the instruments to rule and to govern. Now in US, it appears to me it's different procedures, or they're not either they're not well defined or they can be easily broken. That's I really don't know what to say. There are several theories about what happened and what should have happened, and so I really don't know what to suggest. I think we have to just wait and see, I guess, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, well, I mean, the point I'm trying to make, let's get you, I mean, we just have to wait and see, but it's just the political extremism. And I'm going to go to Mark Lee, and then we're going to continue. Mark, I'm going to have you sort of prompt us with other questions we want to talk about. But Mark, you and I are both Democrats, but don't you think that some of these, and I'm going to then go to Nick P.O.D, don't you think that some of these decisions seem to be out of touch? I mean, defunding the police when you've got crime, creating agencies that aren't forcing police, saying, I got in trouble one day as a city councilor for putting up on July 4th a picture of Thomas Jefferson, and someone told me that I was really being offensive because I was promoting a racist, and I was just, and this was actually that email, believe it or not, was from a high school kid, and to me that just was really kind of weird, that my intent, yeah, I knew that he owned slaves, but for me to just sort of say, well, I can't talk about any presidents anymore. We want to eliminate Mount Rushmore. We don't want to talk about Abraham Lincoln. I mean, don't you think that this is, it's gone a bit far?
I would say it's gone far, but it's gone far on both sides and everything.
Yeah.
One thing I would also add is don't sleep on the young folks, because definitely they're doing a lot of great things, including being activists in their own ways. I had the pleasure yesterday of having a 14-year-old author on that I had mentioned to Nick, and she's written an 800-page novel that's a dystopian novel and actually talks a lot about bullying, because she's been a victim of bullying. So even though the novel wasn't necessarily about that, she's written some other things that fell in that category. So like I said, don't sleep on those young people. They're doing some great things. I do think, and I've said this even on this show, that I sometimes wish that we could find a way to have other options in terms of the two-party system, because sometimes a lot of the party politics and the party games are very similar, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, and a lot of that is lobby-based, meaning that the lobbyists have a lot of control on both of those individual parties. And I think that that's what's frustrating a lot of America. To come to what Shaquille was talking about and all of that, I actually had the pleasure yesterday of, actually earlier this morning, of being in a room in the clubhouse, and a lot of those people were very excited about the whole crypto world, because they were seeing that as a way that they could get rich or level the playing field in terms of their finances fairly quickly. And a lot of these folks were very educated people that were in very much educated kind of jobs, whether that was teachers, lawyers, doctors, Indian chiefs, or whatever else they might have been. But they were really getting caught up in that. And we're even seeing some of our major corporations getting caught up in that as well. I just saw that JP Morgan has said that it wants to get into the crypto space. And there's even the talk that the New York Stock Exchange may be creating its own exchange that will be dealing with crypto and all along those lines. So it seems like it's becoming very popular. I have some reservations about it, and I'm still trying to figure out what's going on there, because it does seem like a get rich quick kind of thing that could get a lot of folks in trouble. So I would like to see, as I was saying, some other ways that we can get maybe some additional either parties or that are both legitimate and have a chance of winning, or at least maybe getting some other folks that are engaged. I was a big fan of citizen politics, where maybe you don't even have the party affiliations and all of that. And I think that if you study the Constitution and early history, that's really what they wanted, was more people that were not necessarily beholden to one political system or another, and we're actually going to be trying to work for the common good of all people and all of that. And there are a lot of issues that do need to be addressed, both here in the United States and on the global community as well. So I think that they are things that we have to address and have to find ways to address and all of that. There are some things that were said here that I don't know that I 100% agree with, because I don't know that it's like running rampant that our young people are burning flags and things of that nature. Now, there may be some folks.
Who said that? Hang on, before you say you disagree with that, who said that?
Well, you kind of made this.
No, I didn't kind of. When did I say that?
I was saying the implication was that the way that you go back and listen, the way that you phrased it, it sounded like you were saying that there were a lot of folks that were doing that in the country. That's the way you phrased it, and I would just say that that's the way it came across. Now, if I misinterpreted it, I will take that as well. But I will say that's the way it came across.
You have a big percentage of the progressive left of the Democrats that think that that's absolutely fantastic, that talk about dismantling America and rebuilding it, because there is absolutely nothing in the United States that's worth saving. There's nothing about the United States that is in any way good. And when you have that sort of rhetoric being taught to kids from a very young age, of course they're going to grow up and start burning flags. Okay, and it's an absolute disgrace.
Wait. What are you talking about?
Everything that Western countries.
He's talking about the left. Let's talk about the right. The last time I saw.
Oh, you want to tell me the last time you saw a right-wing political activist burn an American flag?
Washington, D.C. was this guy called Dirty Don. Remember him? The guy with the middle school education. Okay, so let's not talk about
Donald Trump was burning American flags, wasn't it?
Let's talk about the right dismantling it.
Can
you say that, Shaquille?
Was Donald Trump right? When did Donald Trump burn American flags? When was a bunch of MAGA supporters burning American flags?
When did the left invade Congress? Tell me, Shaquille. When did they invade Congress? Hello.
It's not
so please don't hang it on the radical left.
Hang on.
If you're going to hang it on the radical left, you got to hang it on the radical right.
Now, okay, let me address what you've just said. So firstly, it's not established that everybody that was at those Capitol riots were in fact extreme right-wingers. Sure, but let's just say they were. Okay, but let's just say they were.
Not everybody, no.
Okay, let's just say that everybody who rioted there at the Capitol, let's say that every single one of them was an extreme right-wing radical person. Mm-hmm. How many Republicans came out in support of them? Would none be the answer?
None.
Now, when Democrats and when generally young people, sometimes it's older people, burn flags, loot, use violence against people, attack veterans and things like that.
Sure.
When they do that, you have, I'm not going to name the particular politicians, but I know you all know who I'm talking about. You have people like the squad members and like other people like them that are progressive politicians that celebrate that think that that's absolutely fantastic, that's a great idea. And what I am saying is, you might agree with them. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. But what I am saying to you is that if you are a political strategist and you, for some reason, decide that you want to be a political strategist for the Democrats, that kind of behavior is not going to be endearing to the everyday person, because most people do not want to grow up hating the country that they are from. They want to grow up loving their country. And if you can get back to talking about warts and all America's past, including the bad bits in America's past, and how America overcame those challenges, there might be a bit more pride in being American amongst the younger people.
Okay, what you're saying is you have some wimpy Democrat leaders. I totally agree.
And I'm going to throw in here before
they need to be flogged, just like the Republican leaders need to be flogged. I'm going
to jump in here, and then we're going to get to the next topic. But I think I'm going to throw out one question to everyone. But for me, I'll give you, speaking from experience. I've won 4 elections with 65% of the vote in a city that's 1/3 Republican, 1/3 Democrat, and 1/3 Independent. Time and time again, my own party has told me that I'm going to lose. In fact, the last 2 elections, I was not endorsed by the Democrats, and I won in a landslide. At the polling on the day of the election, there were Democrats out there saying Steve Rao is a bad man because he works with Republicans. He has friends that are Republicans, and I have friends that are Republicans. My father is a Republican. My family, many are Republicans. I'm a moderate Democrat. But time and time again, reaching across the aisle, I believe that the average citizen out there wants somebody that's going to listen, respect, and that's the way I was raised. Now, if I had taken my advice from the consultants, they were projecting I was going to lose in a landslide, and I won the largest election that I've ever won, and I'm 4-0. So I think that there is a value of breaking away. I'm still taking a lot of criticism from the progressives. They're coming after me to take my head off and whatever I run for again. But I'm like, bring it, because I don't think it's working. And maybe I'm wrong.
No, you're absolutely right. It isn't working. The thing is, the wingnuts on the left side, what I'm trying to say, are as bad as the wingnuts on the right side. You got really nutty progressives out there, Steve. There's no question about it. But you also have very nutty right-wing people.
So here's my loaded question.
But I don't think that anybody on the right tries to use political power or abuse the political system in order to force other people to live by their rules. And that's what the left is doing.
Apparently, you haven't spent enough time in America, Shaquille.
Well, so all of a sudden, in the 2 years since COVID's been on, all of a sudden you've got right-wing people that are forcing their views.
They've always been that way. You just haven't gone to the places where they live and spent enough time living. They're nutty as what they call a rat in a drain pipe. Nutty as a rat in a drain pipe.
I suppose these would be the same
Idaho someday.
These would be the same nutty secessionists. These would be the same nutty secessionists that thought, hey, you know what? It's a little bit unfair for us here in the South to have to pay 94% of all the taxes, okay, and have the northern states get subsidies by our tax dollars. So let's secede. Those would be the same. Those would be the same nut jobs that when they went to the Supreme Court said, "Oh, I'm sorry. When you voluntarily join the union, you're not allowed to leave. You cannot separate." Oh, but West Virginia, of course, you can secede. That's absolutely fine. But the southern states, no, you cannot secede from the union.
Hey, Shaquille,
you're talking about what happened to
the
200 years ago?
Abraham Lincoln, who suspended habeas corpus.
Shaquille, let's bring you to, what is it, the 21st century? Okay, so we're not living 200 years ago. We're living
if you want to come and talk about today, you please tell me how many Republicans
today, and if you just go back a little year ago,
how many Republicans?
Right-wing people that you love, that you think are not going to try to enforce things on people, invaded Congress, and even they're so right-winger that the Republicans couldn't even stand them, and they left.
So it wasn't the mainstream beliefs of the Republican Party. Then it wasn't the mainstream beliefs.
No, it was the right wing
or the political center right.
That's let me ask you a question. Before we get to the next question, let me just ask everyone a question. Do you believe or do you not believe that we should have a third party in the United States? Do you think that's viable, Chris?
Absolutely. A third party, a strong third party. And the way you do that is you win at the lower levels. You win at the council level. You win at the dog catcher level. You start winning third party seats at smaller levels, and then all of a sudden you come up into that state, into the county, state, and then national level. If you don't start low, if you're gonna start the presidency or senator, you're never gonna win third party seats. But let me tell you something. James Buckley, back in 1970, whatever it was, William Buckley's brother won an independent seat in a Democrat area, and that was something that was extraordinary at that point in time. And an independent senator sitting in the Senate. So
I can go even closer than that, Chris, and everything. Let's not forget, because like I said, I went to school in Milwaukee, which is not that far from Minnesota, and there was a great entertainer and wrestler by the name of Jesse Ventura that also won as an independent as well. So he ran as an independent and he won as an independent. That was in more recent times along those lines. So I am definitely a fan of independent politics and think that even some of those folks that are on the more liberal side would agree that they might need some independent politics going on as well. So definitely that is something that I think both sides can agree on. Now, what the nature of those politics will be, that's up to those people that come out and run. There may be some that might be more libertarian. There may be some that may be a little bit more Green Party-like.
I nominate Steve Rao for independent.
We're trying to get Steve to get out of this Morrisville thing and move up to be like governor of the state.
That's right.
So it's just.
We'll be talking about that. There's some talk about some stuff.
Very, very difficult, but we do need to have what they call independent thinking. I just don't get these parties. And I've been a member of both parties. Independent party is the one you want to be in.
Sasha, what do you think? Independent party? You think we should?
Independent, baby.
Well, I think first comes to mind the experience of billionaire Ross Perot, who was considered to be presidential candidate, and as independent, he's done very well. I think he got about 18% of popular vote, which for the first time ever and the only time actually That's a remarkable achievement. See, the problem is that people who are attracted to politics, they want, okay, I should say most of them, not all of them, but most of them are trying to extract some personal gains one way or another from being in politics. And if you are supported by one of the major parties, it's so much easier to get elected and to get all the perks and to get ahead in life or so on. So any viable would-be politicians with any brains definitely will consider to run as a representative of one of the two major parties. So the only less efficient, less talented people would try to do something on their own as independents or otherwise, and they will fail 100%. That's why I think that the two-party system in the United States for foreseeable future is absolutely unbeatable, irreplaceable. That's my look.
Well, guys, before we go to the next issue, you guys are my kitchen cabinet. When I go to the White House one day, this will be my cabinet. Chris Greco, I think you might be Secretary of Defense. But, here's the thing. I mean, my advisors. I mean, do I run?
Steve, you're in trouble.
Do I run for the state? Do I run for the state legislature, or do I run for U.S. Congress or Lieutenant Governor and use that year and a half to have more time to raise the money? Because my problem is, I would raise $300,000 for a job that pays $15,000 a year. Whereas I could stay where I'm at and have a good life and run for something. So that's something that I'm thinking about with my family and my team.
Yeah, I think you would do good in that, and you would be a great
wait,
leader
Steve,
and all of that.
You raise $300,000 and you get paid $15,000.
Yeah,
how does that math work?
If I raise $500,000,
Shaquille, how's that work for you?
Yeah. So I mean, I'm working through my family and everything because I am doing.
Yeah, but why would anybody do that? That's the stupidest thing I ever heard.
Well, Steve Rao is not personally putting the money in, right? He's raising it,
right?
But as I didn't get to answer the question about the independent party or the third party,
we're talking about U.S. dollars. What job
guys,
do you do?
Here's the thing.
Hold on a second. I think Shaquille wanted to.
Go ahead, Shaquille. Sorry.
Shaquille wanted to answer
I didn't get to answer that question. I don't actually think that the third party solves any kind of problem. If the idea would be that the third party would bring everybody from centre left to centre right in under the same umbrella, but I don't really think that solves anything. The centre left is already well looked after by the Democrats, and the centre right is already well looked after by the Republicans. The problem is that party room delegates are the ones that are making these decisions, and they're the ones that are nominating the people that are going to represent the party. This is why you have people like AOC threatening to primary other senators and other House reps because they're not going along with what she says. And she knows that in the party room, you're going to see more party activists. People who are somewhat interested in politics will come out to vote, but very rarely will they actually go to their local chapter meetings, their local party meetings, and actually have their say there. And the people that do tend to be activists, and they tend to be on the extreme. And that's where there's a real disconnect between what people want and the political leaders that are supposed to be their representatives. So I don't think.
May I tell you a very interesting story?
If I can just quickly just say one last thing, Sasha. And even if you did have a successful party, you would then need to address how the votes for that party are going to work. So, for example, in Australia, we have preferential voting. So what are you going to do in the United States if a third party is there, let's say that there was a split vote, 33% to all three parties? Exactly what would you do in determining which party actually forms government, which party actually takes the Senate and the executive branch? I think these would be complicated issues.
Hey, dude, do you want to talk to this AOC? You keep mentioning her like you love her or something. You want me to give her a call?
Do you know anybody else that threatens to primary? Do you know anybody else that threatens to primary seasoned politicians as much as she does?
Well, let's call her and bring her on.
Oh, okay. Absolutely, you can bring her on.
We'll give her a call right now.
Guys, let's go to the Mark. We're going to go on.
Sasha wanted to say something.
Okay, Sasha, please.
Well, talking about different forms of governing, there is a very interesting story. In Russia, there is a very small republic, Kalmykia. It's a Buddhist republic, and the president of that republic was appointed at one point, about 20 some years ago, somebody by the name Mr. Ilumzhinov. Nick may know. For many years, he was the president of Chess International Federation, FIDE. Right. So the first day when he came on a job as the president of Kalmykia, first of all, he immediately changed his title from president to a Khan. The next thing what he did, he told the parliament and all the people who were there, "Are you still there? Go back to work. I'm the Khan, and I will rule, and you get out of here." And he managed to govern for several years. That's maybe that's something what should be considered in the United States. We have so many levels of government, and so many on the state level, on federal level, on city level. I would just let them to just go find the work and work.
Oh, do we have time for a quick commercial break? I got a commercial for you guys. Here it is.
Holiday, ooh, a holiday, I declare.
I mean, I like that commercial. Hey,
I'm Steve Rao, and I paid for that message. No,
wait. We have one specifically for you. Just a minute. Okay.
Hey, so before we go to news around the world, real quickly before we go to Shaquille, Mark, Black History Month leader of the day.
Actually, I like the ones that Chris came up with, so I'm going to defer to him and let y'all tell who he came up with, because there were two amazing folks that are definitely some great leaders, and I love the ones that he created. So let's
Chris,
go with
please. Can you?
Well, so the first one I want to talk about is Eunice Carter. Now, you're going to have to look that one up because most people don't know about this very, very, very talented prosecutor. And she prosecuted Lucky Luciano in New York. She was a prosecutor in New York, decided to go after this guy. And she was met with death threats and everything else. You know, you got to remember, this is 1935. And so she successfully prosecuted this guy. He spent time in prison, and I'm sure he remembered who did that. And then the other one is Katherine Johnson. Now, Katherine Johnson is an interesting. She was portrayed on Hidden Figures, but really you need to read her story. It's just an amazing story. But basically, at 15, she went to college, and she knew more about orbital mechanics than many of the engineers at NASA. When she was when John Glenn was getting into Friendship 7, he was literally getting into the capsule. He turned around and he said, hey, is Katherine Johnson going to be doing the orbital mechanics? I'm not getting in this capsule unless you tell me Katherine Johnson is doing the orbital mechanics. Yeah. And they said, yeah, they are there. So he got in the capsule, and even during the orbits, he was saying, okay, what are the figures? Get the figures from her. What are the figures? And she was doing it by hand. Yeah. She was doing the figures by hand. Just an amazing woman. They named a building in Houston after her at the NASA Space Center. Just amazing person, and two of our unsung heroes, I think.
Definitely
fantastic. Well, thank you for sharing. Quickly around the world, we're getting the last 20 minutes of the show. Congratulations to Canada for winning the women's gold medal for hockey. Michaela Shiflin fell again for the third time. God, I really feel for her. I think I don't know who won the Russian figure skating, but I think Kamila Valieva is still in there. Probably could win the gold, although we don't know if they're
awarding medals.
She
ended up fourth. Sherbakova first, Trusova second, and a Japanese skater third.
Okay. And then we are waiting here about and then the other thing. No news yet on Russia and the Ukraine, things have gone a bit quiet. So that might be a good sign. Maybe diplomacy is at work. Only time will tell. And the mayor of New York City eliminated almost every agency in New York except for the police department. And so that's good news. He's not defunding the police. Lots of things going on in the world. I mean, we could. I don't know if there's anything that you all want to talk about today. We are working on bringing some guests in next week, and as we close out Black History Month next week.
So one of the things you just mentioned, Mayor Adams up there in New York, one of the things that I will add is that he just created a summer youth program that apparently is going to hire some record 100,000 youth around the area. So that could be a great thing and all of that. So he's just announced that would be part of those budget things that he was doing as well. So definitely a lot of concern about the youth and the youth going to get some work. So definitely that was good to hear that from the Big Apple and things along those lines. I actually had the privilege yesterday of having a conversation, and this may surprise folks since this person is actually a Democrat, but they were being criticized and all of that because I was talking to a person from Nevada, and they were actually one of the guests on the online dinner party, and we got into a whole conversation about homelessness. And apparently in the state of Nevada, they will send you with a one-way bus ticket out of the state of Nevada and all of that, and they have made that a part of their rules and regulations, and I need to verify that and check that out. But I have heard of a couple of states that do that, so I don't know what people on the panel's thoughts about some of the extreme ways that we handle homelessness in the different cities.
They actually sent them to California, and they camp out at Home Stoner's front yard. So it's kind of like
they don't go anywhere near. I don't go anywhere near Marina Del Rey, let me tell you.
Well, what do they have security guards?
I wouldn't hang out in Marina Del Rey.
Hey, Shaquille, do they have security guards there?
His complex, where he lives, I believe they have 35 security, 24.
Yeah, right. It's a secured community. But this is typical high-level Democrats. They want to help everybody, but please don't get close to them. And they live in secured gated communities.
Well, it's interesting. I have a phrase, and the phrase I took with me in the military and everything else is: nobody believes that the house is flooding until your ankles get wet.
Right, exactly.
That's the way it goes. Yeah. I just have two books that I want you guys to just take a look at. William Poundstone, Gaming the Vote, and Malcolm Gladwell, Talking to Strangers: What We Should Know About People We Don't Know. Read both. The Gaming the Vote thing is unbelievable. If you read that, you'll find out.
What's the name of it? Gaming the Vote?
Gaming the Vote. Yes. William Poundstone is unbelievable. He has a book out, How to Predict Everything. It's one formula. I can share it with you, sometime.
Well, why don't you get him on one of our shows? We have a media show for all these Pulitzer Prize winners.
William Poundstone is fantastic.
Yeah, we got to get him on for sure.
Yeah. And I would actually tear up. I want to meet this guy.
I mean, we've had the guy that wrote Rich Dad Poor Dad on our show. We had the E-Myth guy on our show. We've had a Pulitzer Prize winner on our show, obviously The Millionaire Next Door. So see if this guy's got a decent book. We have a show on Monday, Media Monday, to put him on. So reach out if he's available.
Speaking of media, and I'm just curious, and like I said, I'm not going to say one way or the other whether the answer is right or wrong, but Chris, you were in the military, and I imagine that you, doing your illustrious career, probably had some time even yourself, or maybe not yourself because of age, friends in your family that were dealing with the Vietnam War. And the Vietnam War was definitely not a very popular war. And definitely there were folks that ran off to Canada and did other things along those lines. But Shaquille had actually earlier talked about the young people burning flags and things of that nature. The images I remember of that are more of the 60s and the 70s. I don't know that I have seen as much images of that currently and in modern times as I did when I was a youth, and I do mean a youth, in the 60s and 70s. So I guess my question for everybody is, how much of this is media portrayal and media kind of like thoughts that this is happening? Because I can tell you that I have not seen a flag burned at either State or Duke, and I live around the corner from Duke and not that far from North Carolina Central University. Not saying that they're not burning them, but I haven't seen it.
Well, I'll tell you something. I still tear up at the Star Spangled Banner. If you take a look at the Star Spangled Banner, the actual words of the first verse, it's a question. It's not a statement.
Mhm.
It's a question. It says, does the flag still fly over the home of the brave? Home of the free,
Yes.
land of the brave, land of the free, and home of the brave. It's all question. There's no statement in there whatsoever. So does it? And I think that what happens is that we constantly tell ourselves, yes, it does. And we have to. That's our country. That's our symbol of our country. And I think burning flags is. I think I'll leave that to the Iranians and ISIS and the rest of them. I think burning flags is a passé thing. I think that people realize that basically what it was doing, it was causing more people to when you blow at my flag, I'm going to cling it tighter to me. Don't try to blow it off of me. But if you burn the flag, I'm just going to cling tighter to it. It's that type of situation. So I think you're right, Mark. I think it's not a media thing at this point.
And it's juvenile. Who cares?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, the thing is, if you're a middle school
but if
person,
it
you go burn a
is,
flag.
but that's the thing.
I wouldn't mind burning an Australian flag someday.
Come to this country and try that. See how.
Oh, really?
Okay,
would like that.
Jeez, Nick.
We have some national pride. Thank you very much. But no, look, I think of course it's juvenile, but the thing is, it shouldn't be celebrated. And the thing is that when it comes to Western countries, especially the Five Eyes countries of Canada, the United States, the UK, Australia, and New Zealand, we represent so much hope. We represent an ideal that so many people, billions of people around the world would like to achieve. And for them to see, those flags and those symbols and what they mean being disrespected in that way is heartbreaking for many of them. And I just don't think that's in any way acceptable. And it certainly shouldn't happen across the Five Eyes countries that are becoming, the most woke amongst the world, and we shouldn't be.
Can I burn a Russian flag? Would I get arrested for doing that?
Try in Russia and see how you go.
Ooh.
Yeah, I don't think that would fly in
spot.
Russia. You probably get shot.
But
But the thing that I hear most people talk about.
Even if I went to a country that I wasn't a fan of, it wouldn't occur to me to want to burn that country's flag. And I remember being in Cub Scouts and we were holding up the Australian flag, and myself and the other 7-year-old or 8-year-old put it on the ground, and we were folding it up, and Kayla came over and said, no, you can't do that. Pick up the flag and make sure that the flag never touches the ground.
Right.
And so it was instilled into us at a very young age before we actually really knew what the flags represented and what we stood for as a country and all that. We were kids. We didn't know. But, we were taught how to respect that. And to see people show that level of disrespect for their country, that's why I keep coming back to on so many shows and say, name me a better country. If you're so critical of
New Zealand.
Say it's such a terrible place. Name me another country. We would have
New
said
Zealand.
New Zealand.
But hold on a
New
second.
Zealand at the moment in Wellington. And remember, I've got family in New Zealand.
Switzerland,
New Zealand.
number 2.
Wellington actually has. That's where their capital is. This ridiculous-looking beehive thing. They have had 10 days now. I think they're into their 11th days of protest about vaccine mandates. Okay, and the idiot twerp that's in charge of New Zealand, all she can come up with is say, "Oh, it must be some imported, phenomenon." It's not an imported phenomenon. People all over the world are unhappy about it. But you know what Jacinda Ardern hasn't done to her credit? She hasn't trampled on their human rights by invoking emergency powers like that twit in Canada has.
But the number one
Canada.
thing.
Wait. Why are you going to let this guy get away with stuff like this? Okay. He did not have to invoke emergency powers if those twits in Canada didn't park their stupid trucks on bridges.
He is an appalling prime minister.
Americans go through.
He is an appalling prime minister. The party should oust him, and I hope, I hope to goodness that you would have.
I hope to goodness he hauls those trucks
that he's not re-elected. And if it wasn't for the absolutely absurd system of governments that they have in Canada, maybe the Senate would do something about it. But of course, their Senate in Canada is a complete mess. Less than 7% of the population of Canada agrees with the Senate.
We have a Canadian here. He should defend
so there's no
country.
checks and balances.
You're being attacked by those.
And what he has done is an absolute abuse of the Canadian people.
Sean, you can let him get away with this.
No, hold on a second.
Canada, that will not be long.
Nick, hold on a second. I got a quick question because it's based on something that I've heard from Shaquille a couple of times. One, I'm going to make a statement that the number one chant that I've heard from my friends on the more liberal side when they've gone into the protest mode and everything is actually not anything to do against the flag or anything of that nature. It's actually making a claim back to having pride in the area, because the number one chant that you will hear people say throughout the country, including Black Lives Matter and chants here in Durham, is whose streets? My streets, which means that you are actually saying that you want to have some sort of right to have access.
Yeah. Whose streets? Our
It ain't your
streets. This
street,
is somehow
it's
some
our
national. This is somehow some national cry of patriotism.
Okay.
Mark, give me a break.
It
will
is
you?
a pride to some
Come on
degree.
now.
If you
Come
listen to
on
follow
now.
and everything. But my question
What
for you,
is so-
Shaquille,
No,
I have a question for you, Shaquille.
Another one of those great
No,
patriotic
I have a
things
question
that
for
they
you,
call
Shaquille,
out.
which is what I was originally going to ask. But I have a
Seriously,
question
I
for you.
don't mind if we disagree with each other, but seriously, what's
It's
that?
not-
book
whoever
from-
said my street is wrong.
What's that
It's
book
our
again
street.
about don't pee on
And
my
that's what
land?
I'm saying when it says
Come
who
on
street
now.
our
That's
street.
Judy.
It said who
Just
street our street. It doesn't say who street my
Our
street.
street, baby. It's not
It's who
my
said
street.
our
See, that's the problem that Shaquille has. He doesn't get that it's not their streets, those stupid truckers. It's our streets. So what the Canadian Traduce do is to pick up those trucks, grab them, take them to a lot, sell them, and say your truck, it's over. Put the hammer down. That's the right thing to do.
If that is your opinion, Nick,
Yeah,
that is your
absolutely.
opinion,
Put the
no,
hammer
that's
down.
fine. If that's your, obviously I don't agree with you because I believe that.
What
everybody
are you going to be
has the right
soft on that? You're
No, not
softy?
soft on it. I believe that everyone
you
has
some
the right to
lefty
criticise
softy?
their government and to seek redress and to protest. But if you don't believe that they should have that right, and you're going to say that you're not some partisan, one-eyed partisan hack, but you actually believe in fairness, you would be saying exactly the same thing about the BLM protesters
Absolutely.
and the group that took over up there and the People's
Absolutely.
Republic,
Absolutely.
whatever they call
All
it.
the
Right?
BLMers,
National Guard. So
all
you would
those
agree.
BLMers that
So,
got
hang on,
out
so,
of
Nick,
line,
so you would agree then
I would
that Donald Trump should have sent the National Guard in to break up.
Absolutely.
To break up
Every
chats,
time.
to break
Every
up
time.
those rights.
You can
Donald Trump
protest
should have
up
done
and down
exactly that, right?
sidewalks.
You would agree with
Okay.
that.
I would agree.
Those
Yeah,
people
absolutely.
that are homeless all around America, they should be taken by force and taken off the public streets. You would agree with that?
Absolutely.
Because that's not Democrat policy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I
so
disagree
you
with
better
a lot
make
of
up your mind
a lot
what
of
you
your softy Democrat policies that you support, Shaquille. I disagree with. Okay.
Oh, I
So
don't
the thing
think
is,
I
I
support very
would
many
sit
of those
there.
policies.
I'd put the bloody hammer down and take them out every time. Okay.
Well, it's
So
interesting
that's
because every time a Republican does want to do something like that, you come on here and bitterly oppose it.
I never did do that. No, that's in your dream world, buddy. You haven't listened.
I think
okay?
you've been in academia.
I do it. I do it
to know where
both.
you
I
actually
do it.
stand
I
on
put the
anything.
hammer down both
Hey,
ways.
Shaquille,
You know,
quick question
the
for you.
hammer down is what you want to do. This
As we wind
this
down and
liberal
everything, 'cause I know we
softy
got to toss
and
it
this
back to
Republican
Steve.
softy, forget it.
I know we got to toss it back to Steve as we wind down, but I did have a quick question for Shaquille, because I'm hearing two different things, and to some degree they're matching, but they're not. Because on one side you're saying that you have some issues with some of the things that AOC and the squad has said in terms of freedom of speech and things of that nature, but you're also very supportive of the truckers. Which way is it on the freedom of the speech angle and everything? Because I'm thinking that you would be very much
Freedom of right speech, but not left speech. I mean, come on, Shaquille, just admit it. You know,
So Sullivan,
it's okay to go take over Congress if you're a right winger, but not if you're a Democrat.
So I never said anything of the sort. So I believe the case is Texas v. Johnson, which allows for the burning of flags, which I've read it, and I don't think it actually says you can
not
burn
our homeowners association.
Right.
You can't. do it.
But in any case, if the Supreme Court says that's an expression of freedom of speech, you have the right to do that. That's fine. What I said is I don't think that endears the party to the majority of the voting populace. And there's not going to be a majority of Americans that say, you know what, you're right. I hate this country. This is the party for me. Let's destroy everything. There's very few people, unless they have mental health disorders, which probably a lot of people on the left do.
And the right,
that idea.
Please,
Right,
Mr.
sure,
Media
sure.
Man,
Some of the people on the
say
extreme
left
right do.
and the right.
And some of the people on the extremes do.
You sound like
but
Fox News.
you asked me two different questions there. I'm going to respond to it. The Canadian
But I
truckers
just hate
are not
listening
out
to
there
Fox
burning Canadian flags. That's not what they're doing. Okay, so what I'm saying to you is, and I said this to you a couple of days ago, I don't have a problem with people protesting. Whilst I don't agree with everything that BLM stands for, I do agree with some of the things that they want to achieve. BLM has every right to protest and to seek a redress of their grievances. What they do not have the right to do is to loot stores, to use violence against their everyday citizen and cause mayhem all over the place. That is not acceptable. That is not. That is not.
We can agree. We can all
You're
agree with
setting
that.
fires.
Violence is not acceptable.
I think that was a
Period.
response
That's not
here in
acceptable.
Raleigh.
If the truck is
I
doing it,
would
it's not
have taken them
acceptable,
out,
David.
Davey. I'd take them out.
And
every
you
time.
don't see people coming out in support of right-wing groups that do that. You don't see mainstream politicians coming out in support of that. But you do see Democrat politicians coming out in support of the idea of let's not have a police service at all. Let's empty all of our jails.
Of course, you've got some wimpy Democrats.
Let's have no bail for people that are charged with murder. In New York City,
you're blaming
let's
the
get a
wimpy
convicted.
Democrats.
Let's get a guy who was convicted of murdering a police officer in a bar 25 years ago by shooting him in the head twice at point blank range. Let's put him on the advisory panel to oversee how police behave. I mean, those are the sorts of things that I can't imagine very many people in New York agree with.
Shaquille, hold on. Before you go on, let's talk about this for a second. Let's talk about the changing of people. Nelson Mandela was a revolutionary. He killed people in bombings, killed them dead. All of a sudden, and it's not all of a sudden, years and decades later, he changed the way he was thinking. All of a sudden, he realized violence was not the way to do things. So I agree with you. I totally agree with you that people that are put in prison that for a murder that they've committed may have to come back within our trust a little bit slower than people that have not had that situation happen to them. But at the same time, people can change. I mean, look at George Wallace. George Wallace. I mean, he gave scholarships to minority women. After he got shot.
It depends on what the crime is that they've committed. But
yes,
if it's an egregious enough crime, okay, they can change as much as they want to. Do you know who doesn't get to change? Their murder victim. Their murder victim doesn't get to change. Their murder victim is dead, and that's forever. So there are some crimes that if you commit, that should be it. Okay, and if anybody wants to discuss things like the death penalty, all you have to do is have a look at the case with Dr. Pettit and what happened to his two daughters in Connecticut. Yeah. Okay, and now you've got one of those guys who has said after he has committed the most atrocious abuses against these two young girls, set them on fire while they were still alive. Now he says, you know what? I identify as a girl, and so at the taxpayer's expense, he gets to go on all of these different treatments and hormone suppressants and all the rest of it. If I was living in that community, I would be absolutely appalled. That is atrocious. And I don't believe that there is a majority of people in Connecticut that agree with that. But yet the politicians have decided to go ahead and do that anyway. And to answer your question, Nick, I don't see Republican politicians going ahead and making those sorts of rule changes and making those sorts of things against the will of the people. But I do see Democrats do it. Not all Democrats, but the hard left Democrats, they do it. And when people complain, they say, you're a racist, you're a sexist, you're a transphobe, you're a this or you're a that. And you're basically wrong. You're a deplorable. And that's not going to help the Democrats. And coming into the midterm elections, I think it does not bode well for them.
Yeah, that's because you have wimpy leaders. What can I tell you? The America's full of wimpy fans.
Today I'm going to...
Nick, along those same lines, and just really quickly, I will say that there are people, to Chris's point, that have changed, because I know at least 4 or 5 legitimate, and they were in the gangs. They did all kinds of heinous crimes, and they definitely are now working to help those youth get out of that situation. And I have a great deal of respect for those individuals, even though I do not like what they did, including at least 1 or 2 that are known to have murdered some folks. But that's just saying that they are now trying to change. But now I'm going to toss it over to Steve, and we continue this dialogue.
It's been a wonderful discussion. We'll see you tomorrow at PBS Carolina. My closing thought is I'm working on a blog tonight for WRAL, the major publication here, and I'm going to just give it a role of practice, what I'd like to say. But during Black History Month, there's been some focus on minority, diversity, inclusivity. Those are like the big themes. Many cities are hiring managers to impose these kinds of policies or put these policies in place. And President Biden, during a lot of the negotiations on the infrastructure bill, was talking about investing in minority business ownership and Black business ownership. And I want to just say that I was talking this week about Manoj George, the initial CFO of Red Hat, who took Red Hat from $5 million to $5 billion. And much has been made of his success as an entrepreneur. I knew his children. It was a very tragic death, dying of pancreatic cancer. But I don't think we have a conversation enough that just giving money and loans to minority businesses and helping them to become successful isn't really what only we need to focus on, but it's sharing the successes of other entrepreneurs, people of color who have succeeded. Today we have Shaquille Latimer on our show, a very successful person.
Don't include me in that.
Well, an Australian.
Don't include me in that. I don't want my skin color to matter to anybody else, so don't include me in that. If you want to pick on someone who's successful who isn't white, use somebody else. I'm not interested.
Okay, well, thank you for being disrespectful as I close out my monologue, but we'll talk offline about that. But I wanted to, first of all, I'm going to go ahead and end my monologue today. What I was trying to say before Shaquille cut me off was that it doesn't matter what the color of your skin is, that what matters is that you can achieve unlimited success and dreams based on your great ideas. And we need to showcase those examples of leaders like Manoj George and others who have been able to succeed in spite of their race or the color of their skin. And I don't think we're having that conversation enough. And so throwing money at the problem isn't the answer. I think we need to create a system where we're showcasing these successes and showing other minorities that they can succeed and they can start businesses. That's all I have to say today. I'll be back tomorrow. Sorry, my monologue got cut short. We'll be back live from PBS Carolina tomorrow. And from our family to yours, we welcome you to our show. Thank you so much, and be safe wherever you are.